It's been the worst time of my life. If someone accused me of raping or hurting them, I would never do that because I have a 22-year-old daughter. Hollywood has been shaken by breaking news. The term for Clifton Powell is over. Powell built a name for himself that fans all over the world knew, from his rough childhood in Southeast D.C. to his big parts in Friday and Ray. But scandals, false charges, gambling, divorce, and racism almost destroyed everything. What did this mean for your career? Did it mean the beginning of a darker truth that Hollywood didn't want you to know? Everything has changed now that the sentence is in. Let's find out. Soundwave. Does Clifton Powell no longer work in Hollywood? Breaking news from Hollywood has shocked both fans and people who work in the business. ABC says that Clifton Powell's punishment is now official. The news has made a lot of people wonder if one of the most recognized faces in movies is now going to retire. You might not know the name Clifton Powell right away, but his face will stick with you. He has been in a lot of movies over the past 30 years, making him known as one of Hollywood's most dependable character actors. Menace to Society, which came out in 1993, was his big break. A gritty urban story that showed how hard life is on the streets. Powell got a lot of attention for his part in that movie because of how real he made the character. Soon after, he became a regular on The Friday Show, where his quick wit and funny delivery made him a fan favorite. Powell was very versatile and could easily switch between serious dramas and funny ones. This showed that he could play almost any part that was given to him. Powell's reputation was solidified in 2004 when he played a part in the highly acclaimed biopic Ray, which starred Jamie Foxx. Because it was so good, his performance got him nominated for a NOACP Image Award, putting him in the spotlight with some of the best players in Hollywood. He was in movies like Dead Presidents, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, Rush Hour, and Next Friday along the way, and each one made an impact that people remembered long after the movie was over. Having done more than 100 roles in movies and TV shows over the years, became the man Hollywood called when they needed an unforgettable bad guy, father figure, trickster, or even police officer. Powell was different from other artists not only because of how much work he did, but also because he could work in a lot of different styles and types. He could scare people with a mean look, make them laugh with perfect timing, and give a dramatic scene some quiet emotional depth. Because he could do so many things, directors, casting agents, and audiences all admired him. This helped him build a job that most actors could only dream of. Even though Powell was successful at work, his personal and business life was not easy. Now that we know what his final sentence is, we have to think about both the good and bad things that have happened in his Hollywood life. How could? Man who worked so hard to become famous, who lived through the rough streets of Southeast Washington, D.C., and made his life into a Hollywood movie, now be at the center of a breaking news story that sounds like the end of the world? It's not often that the difference between success and failure is so clear. On the one hand, Powell was an actor who was in a lot of movies, both big hits and obscure classics. On the other hand, he was having more and more problems and issues outside of acting, which was a story that was very different from the one that was shown on the red carpet and in front of the cameras. This is why telling everyone about his death sentence is such a big deal. It's about putting a whole career in the worst possible light. There have been many scandals in Hollywood before, but this one makes me wonder, can a man ever really get better once the public and the business have made up their minds? The case that almost put an end to everything. New information confirms that Clifton Powell's long-running legal fight, which began more than a decade ago, is now over and no longer leads to criminal charges. The story was told in secret for years, but it's only now that the whole picture is clear. A man who was once known for being strong in more than 100 movies was brought to his knees. The scariest thing about this whole story is how much damage was done before the courts even made their ruling. The man worked very hard to build his life. How does an accusation that hasn't been proven hurt his job so badly? What does this say about the power of popular opinion in the entertainment world? Which is more important? In late summer 2011, a woman going by the name Chiante Myers made shocking claims against Powell. This is when the whole thing started. Her story is that a meeting in a New Orleans hotel room went too far. It started out as a friendly exchange but became, in her words, too hostile to continue. She claimed that when she told him to stop, he didn't listen and kept going anyway. Myers, who was working as a cocktail waitress at Harrah's Casino at the time, made a report that got picked up by the media very quickly. News outlets like TMZ wrote about it with blunt headlines that didn't leave much room for nuance or opinion. The quick change was terrible for Powell. Overnight, Ray, the actor who had made people laugh and feel something in Friday, was seen in a completely different light, being accused of one of the worst things that can happen to a man. As soon as the claims were made, Powell clear rejected them. He said in a statement through his lawyer that the claims were false and that he planned to take all legal action possible against the woman who made them. But as soon as these kinds of claims are made public, the damage starts right away. The headlines didn't go away even after the original criminal investigation was thrown out for lack of proof. Later, Myers filed a legal suit against Powell and asked for more than $75,000 in damages. Powell would be stuck in a legal battle that could last for years even if he wasn't found guilty of a crime. He would have to defend not only his freedom, but also his image. The civil case took up all of Powell's time, money, and emotional energy. In criminal court, the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. In civil court, the standard is a preponderance of evidence. This means that instead of showing guilt almost certainly, the question is whether the accusation is more likely than not to be true. For famous people, this makes things even more dangerous because even the smallest hint of wrongdoing can ruin careers, no matter what the courts find in the end. Powell knew this very well. He later told reporters that what was worse than the court case itself was the loss of trust, the loss of work, and realizing that many people had already decided what they were going to do. Movie stars aren't known for being patient or loyal when there's a problem. Reputation and public image are very important in the billion-dollar entertainment business, and studios are quick to distance themselves from any actor whose name becomes linked to controversy. Powell felt the effects right away. He began to lose roles that he had already won. Producers became hesitant because they didn't want to risk getting bad news. He was quickly fired from TV shows after only a few episodes when he used to be able to do them whenever he wanted. He himself remembered one show where he was supposed to be in 7 or 8 episodes, but his part was cut after the second episode for no reason other than the accusations against him. The mental damage was even worse than the money lost. Powell said that time was the most painful thing in his life since his father's death many years before. He said that as a father, the charges hurt him deeply, both because of what they meant and because of how his kids Jet see him after reading such news stories. He always said he was innocent, but he couldn't protect his family from the whispers, rumors, and questions that followed them around. As he strolled down the street, he saw doubt in the eyes of strangers. Online, people who didn't give their names said he was guilty before the proof was even looked at by a court. In a field where opinion is often more important than facts, Powell had been convicted by the court of opinion. It took a long time for the legal case to its end. Powell lived in its shadow for 4 long years, trying to keep up with his work and personal life while lawyers and judges argued over the details. In 2017, the case was finally thrown out because there wasn't enough proof to back up the claims. By 2018, his own counterclaims for slander and mental distress had also been thrown out, which meant the case was over. Yet, even though Powell won, he had to deal with a strange truth. The courts had found him not guilty, but Hollywood did not. This is where Powell's tragedy really starts, and this is where the word final sentence means the most. His punishment was the loss of his name, even though he was never found guilty of a crime. In a field where what people think can be more important than what is true, charges themselves became the punishment. By looking at the facts, it is clear that Clifton Powell was never found guilty of a crime. But when you look at his record, you can't deny the damage. It was taken away from him the parts, the trust, and the steady flow that had made him one of Hollywood's most reliable actors. The case went on for too long, and he lost important years of his career that he will never get back. He went through something that shows how in Hollywood, the idea of blame can sometimes be stronger than the proof. A dropped case should have set him free for good, but instead it left him with a scar that will last a lifetime. Discrimination based on race and Hollywood politics. Clifton Powell's career was formed by both the personal problems that got him into courtrooms and tabloids and the restrictions that have been in place in Hollywood for many years. Powell has been very open about the fact that the color of his skin, not his ability or professionalism, played a role in his casting. He remembered times when directors or network executives turned him down right away because they thought he was too dark for the part, or, in one painful case, because he was so dark that he might scare viewers. When Powell kept getting turned down in this way, he started to wonder if his years of training and track record really mattered when people only saw his skin color. For a long time, Hollywood has believed that marketability and relatability go hand in hand, and how well an actor fits Eurocentric beauty norms is often used to judge how relatable they are. To put this into practice, it meant that actors with darker skin were often kept out of leading parts, especially in romantic stories or roles where the audience had to feel sorry for the character, even thou. G.H. Powell was very smart and talented. These structural biases put him at a disadvantage that he could not fully overcome, no matter how hard he worked. The contradiction that this world showed is what makes it even scarier. Powell was often praised for his ability to play figures who were rough, scary, or dangerous. But when it came time to cast a role that needed sensitivity, charm, or weakness, his skin color was seen as a problem. He couldn't grow as an actor because of this double standard. It stuck him in certain roles and kept him from chances that would have shown the world his wider range. Audiences were already used to seeing him in parts that showed the worst in people, which added to the cycle of false beliefs that followed him around while he was in jail. Powell's anger did not end at the casting table. He saw that people in the black entertainment community were criticizing each other in public, especially in major media outlets that were already quick to write off black artists. In one case, he got into a fight with the famous director Spike Lee because Lee said something about another black character that Powell thought was unfairly.